What comes down but never goes up? Hi, I'm Angel Lily, and this is the Authentic Action Podcast. Welcome. Today's episode is about conflict and getting along because heavens, there's a lot going on out there, and people seem to be having a hard time getting along. So I wanted to talk about it because I think it's important that we talk about the things that are going on, especially if they're bothering us. I'm highly in favor of communication and yeah, I want to tiptoe carefully around some of those buzzwords right now because I hesitated to have this conversation because I'm aware that it's probably going to activate and trigger some of you. And lately, a lot of the things that I've said, maybe I'm hesitant because maybe it's not a lot of things, but some of the things that I've said have activated or triggered people very close to me, people I love, like my mother and like my some of my bandmates, one in particular. And again, these are people I love and many, many friends as well, or acquaintances or former acquaintances, because through the last, I don't know if it's been seems like 2017, there was a little bit of a pretty dramatic shift, probably 2012, I guess. There's shifting going on all the time. And that's really the point that I want to get at is that we tend to mark, like I just did in my mind, um, or like I just did verbally, but we tend to mark in our minds where we think something went astray or what the crucial factor is. But the real truth is that there's a lot more going on than any one of us is really capable of knowing. We can't, any individual isn't going to be able to see the whole picture. And that is why we need to be able to work together and communicate and share our perspectives and not discount each other's perspectives, but instead appreciate our each other's perspectives, especially when they're different, because that's where the real value is. So today's episode, I am gonna call How to Turn Conflict into Stronger Community. I think I always reserve the right to change the names of things and other rights that I'm reserving. But let's get into how conflict might turn out to be an opportunity to build stronger community. I think in some ways that might be obvious, and then again, maybe not. So I broke down a few points I want to talk to. And as I mentioned, the reason that I am getting into this topic right now is because I think it's really relevant. And I had some conflict come up in my personal social media circle that I feel was unfounded, and quite a few people came forward to tell me they thought it was unfounded as well, which made me feel uh, better, made it easier to handle the upsetting nature of basically feeling attacked online. Now, was I actually attacked? No, not really. Is that hyperbolic, like so many things out there and part of the problem? Yeah, it is. And that's what I want to get at is that we're all quite capable, not just quite capable, but sort of programmed, one might say, to default to that lower vibrating kind of name calling, defensive, looking for that one key point to make a not so logical argument about a broader topic or perspective. And our media currently is just like a superhero at doing this and has got people quite worked up in a frenzy with just certain little sound bites that they're now programmed to unlock whole whole tirades of hate and disdain. But the problem with that is that it's leading to a lot of division, a lot of distance in relationships instead of us figuring out how to work together and build better communities. If we stop right there and we just sort of like the third grade version or fifth grade version, if we just stomp off and we don't come back around to figure out how to talk it out and listen to each other and figure out where we're really coming from. And instead, we're just jumping to conclusions, accusing each other, refusing to listen, blowing things out of proportion, taking the worst case scenario, tiniest little pieces of truth, and then making them into, these all or nothing kinds of statements. These are getting us into trouble, I feel like. So that's why I want to talk about it right now. Um, I've been substitute teaching this week. I've been doing that off and on all year. This week I've been doing that again at a elementary school, and elementary's kids are so delightful. And it's been such a delightful reminder of what humanity wants to be. This is, what we're teaching our kids to be is kind and loving and patient and thankful and thoughtful. And what a lot of the adults around me, even some of the staff at the school I'm working at in the teacher's lounge, are expressing is this high level of frustration and uncertainty. And really underneath that is a lot of fear and um, insecurity about the unknown future. And I think if we can if we can stop with the name calling and get to the part where we recognize that we're uncertain about the future and that there's a lot that is can be frightening, just like Chicken Little with the leaf overhead. When you don't know what it is, no matter what it is, it's frightening. So one of the most important things is to not panic. That's rule number one in a lot of people's books. And then to try to gain a broader understanding of what it is so that we're not jumping to the wrong conclusions and running around like chickens with our heads cut off, metaphorically speaking. So, working at this elementary school was really illuminating, like a little mini demonstration or a younger demonstration of how humanity is struggling right now with the things that we don't know how to do. Just like kids in grade school struggle when they don't know how to manage their own emotions, or they don't know how to manage a math problem, or they don't know how to manage a conflict with someone else. They often resort to, well, whatever they've been programmed with, what their parents taught them or what they've seen other people do. And sometimes that's not kindness. And um, unfortunately, I think our media is really not focused on kindness. I can see myself going out of focus. Sorry about that. Coming back. Me and my camera are having a little issue there. Uh, if you're listening, apologies. I'm also doing a video recording. So in grade school, when kids have conflict, kind of their go-to answer that we're all familiar with is the he started it or she started it or they started it, right? I think I think we've all done that, at least when we were younger, and maybe just earlier today. And if you've been around kids at all, then you've certainly heard that a lot. And I've been reminded of that quite a bit. And thankfully, the kids I'm working with are delightful, as I mentioned. But nonetheless, every now and then they've had some conflicts, and they are quite quick to jump right to the other person started it. And that's not because they're trying to be It's not because they're bad, because they're certainly not bad. And it's not because they're trying to, it's no deliberate, intentional manipulation or malintent. There's no bad intention there, usually. Maybe, there's exceptions. Sometimes there are kids who have figured out that they can get other people in trouble, and it gets complex as they get older. It gets more and more complex. And that's the thing that I've realized a lot working with children again lately is that we do get more and more complex. So even though we might think of children as having a harder time regulating their emotions and navigating their relationships, um, what I see lately is that the adults are struggling as well. Maybe, maybe we're out of practice. Maybe we never really figured it out as children, and now we're just sort of fumbling through adulthood. Maybe a little from column A, little from column B. Probably that's, accurate. Whatever the equation is, the, the end point is that there's a lot of conflict popping up on the social media. I've had people who've actually spent time with me say really atrocious words that I don't want to repeat because, again, I don't want to trigger those buzzword things. What I really want to talk about is how can we turn these conflicts into more community, stronger community? How can we find the opportunity in our disagreements, in our clashes of perspective, and use that to recognize that maybe we're not listening to each other. Maybe we're overdue for some conversation, for, a cup of tea together. That reminds me. I'm letting my tea get cold over here. I think as humans, we really do best when we create strong communities. We're not very good on our own. We're pretty thin-skinned. We don't think through these big, complex things that we figured out, like building cars and indoor plumbing and schools, all these things that, yes, while they're imperfect, they're pretty amazing when you stop and think about them. And so many of those things we take for granted. As a side tangent there, the word of the week at the school I'm working at is thankful. So we've talked about being grateful, and even though we didn't talk about it with the third graders, I was thinking a lot about the differences between gratitude and appreciation, subtle nuances. And sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes on some scales it doesn't matter. And I think it's the same when it comes to our relationships. But I think when it comes to the things that are creating the most conflict lately, I think it's important to recognize those nuances. When it comes to those really hard disagreements, that's where it helps to look at where are our commonalities and where, so instead of just seeing a difference and saying, oh, we're different because we have a difference of opinion, looking for how those differences are nuanced so that we can find where we get closer to agreement, basically. Because it's a theory of mine that we are much more alike than we are different in so many ways, and that many of the ways we think we're different, we are exaggerating in our minds those differences. Um, I hesitate to bring up one of those hot button topics, but let's dive into it a little bit. A lot of people are talking about the abortion rights topic as a hard line that just they can't get over, they can't bring anybody across, so they don't see a bridge over. And I understand I mean, believe me, I understand on a personal level how emotionally charged that topic is, the topic of abortion and abortion rights. And I think that we have more, I think that the way that people are talking about it leads me to believe that the media is portraying it like a very black and white issue. Like either you have rights or you don't have rights, or either you are for life or you're against life. And it's not that simple. It's more nuanced than that. And I think most of us are for life, and most of us are for women having rights. Now, how the nuances of all that works out, yes, it differs. And sometimes it differs quite a lot. And I understand some of that is hard to get around. And I propose when we get to those places where it's really hard to get around, that we remember that we're still human beings, that we are trying to build a healthy, happy society together. And that's why some of these things bother us so much. So if we can at least step back and remember that we have that in common. The reason we get passionate about these things is because we care. And sometimes we need to just disengage, just like on the playground or in elementary school when kids can't work it out, you send them to opposite sides of the room, and that's okay. But the thing is, eventually they need to come back and hug or shake hands or talk it out. And that's the same. The same is true for adults. Seems like that should kind of go without saying, but clearly it hasn't been going out without saying. So, it doesn't matter who someone voted for or where they live or how much money they make or what gender they are or what the color of their skin is or what their ethnicity is or how old they are or any of those things. None of those things would justify name calling and dehumanizing and summarizing someone with one label as if that is the totality of what they are, especially without even, not just especially, but um, that's if you catch yourself doing that. When I catch my mind going in that direction, and I'm human, so I have my own biases, I have my own default modes, but when I catch my brain going, pardon me, when I catch my brain going to a default mode like that, I use that as a opportunity. I try to use that as a trigger to remind myself that that's an opportunity for me to grow, to recognize something in myself, to get better at regulating myself, at expressing myself. And probably a good place to start is getting curious and asking questions. If I'm feeling like pointing a finger at someone, well, for one, like they say in grade school, remember that you're always pointing three fingers back at you. And it's funny that those things are so rote when you're in an elementary school. And then it's like everyone just forgets them when we get to be adults on Facebook. So I would love to remind us all of some of those grade school lessons. Like if you catch yourself pointing a finger at someone else, remember to look back at yourself, and there's probably room for improvement there in whatever realm that you're accusing someone else. And none of us is perfect. So if you don't see any room for improvement in that particular arena, well, maybe look for another arena. Um, I think if we all spent more time paying more attention to the areas where we have room for improvement instead of pointing our fingers at others and blaming others for all the problems in the world or all the dead babies or all the lost rights. None of that is any one person or even one group of people's fault. There's nobody's to blame for these big problems. Overarchingly, they're human problems. We are collectively creating them. We're collectively creating them, and we can collectively figure out how to do better and get out of them. But it takes communicating, it takes sharing and appreciating our perspectives, and um, hoping that that heater isn't way too loud. I'm suspecting that it is. I'm gonna try to talk a little louder, maybe move just a little closer here. So it doesn't matter at all any of your your superficial details, your labels that you use. None of those are just would justify someone being cruel to another or dehumanizing. And I think when we step back and we think about again how we'd want to teach our children, that becomes obvious. In most cases, again, I know there are a few people who will disagree with me, and maybe some of those people that disagree is just because of the way I'm phrasing things. Maybe sometimes it's because you're activated or triggered or somebody's, in a dysregulated state right now, and so unable to really see that bigger picture. Or maybe it's just that we fundamentally disagree on that. I can say even if it's, far ends of the spectrum where we disagree, I still wish you well. I still want to get along on this earth together. I don't want to see anyone else suffering, even if we totally disagree. And I don't think anyone is to blame. Now, I've heard some people express opinions lately that make me think maybe some people do think that. I can't really fathom thinking that because to me it's obviously not really true. But there's no single label or identity factor that sums any one of us up completely. We are complex beings. We're full of nuances, beautiful, wonderful nuances. Not only are we complex and full of nuances, but we're always growing and evolving. So we're not the same little cute bundle of complex nuances today as we were yesterday. Now we're a different, new, today's version of ourselves. And that's true every single day. And again, to refer to working with children, it's very obvious when you're working with children because they grow so fast and we're thinking of them as, in this different stage of life, which they are. But you and I are also going through different stages of life. You don't stop going through stages of life once you reach, a 18 or 21 or whatever number. Pick any number. You're continuously every second, really, definitely every day throughout your life, growing and evolving and becoming a different complex bundle of nuances. So the same is true of everyone else. And so to impose a nasty name or label on someone, which again is doesn't even really matter what the name or the label is. It's the intention behind it. When you're calling someone a name with the intention of hurting them with it and trying to make them feel bad and trying to point the finger at them and lay blame, it's time to take a pause. It's time to pause and reflect and get curious about what's really going on. What's underneath that? You could start with, am I afraid? Or what am I afraid of? Or, and I'm pausing here because I know a lot of people are going through this loop of, I'm afraid that fill in the blank, X, Y, Z, people are going to lose their rights, babies are going to die, all these things people that we're afraid of. But one of my favorite questions is that the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Because almost everything that we can think of, I was going to say nothing. We don't know the whole truth. That's what I'm trying to say. We only know fractions of the truth. For one, the truth is ever evolving in its own way. For two, the truth is much bigger than we can really get a handle on, that we can perceive. And for three, the truth is different from different perspectives. You know, what's trauma for the gazelle is dinner for the lion, for example. There's different truths to the same scenario sometimes, and there's also more going on. Like take that gazelle lion example. There's blades of grass, there's probably a grasshopper, maybe there's microbes in the soil, there's a sun. There's so many different perspectives, is my point. And so any one little perspective can't possibly be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And that includes your little perspective. So if you think you know everything about someone based on their skin color, or based on how they voted, or based on their religion, or based on what t-shirt they're wearing, or any of those superficial factors, you're probably at least partially wrong. You might be completely wrong, but you are pretty definitely at least partially wrong. I'd be willing to put money on it or arm wrestle you over it or whatever kind of betting we're into these days. Yeah, no label sums up any one of us completely. No single label. All of us are a whole huge myriad of labels. If you think of all the ways that you might describe yourself, I bet you can come up with a whole lot of them. I shan't guess how many. Did I just say shan't? I did. I don't know where that came from. I grew up with some, a lot of literature, which is a tough word to say. Yeah, and in just the same way that no single label sums up any one of us, no single soundbite sums up any one of the issues that we are facing right now. So when I hear people passing around or bringing up as an argument a soundbite from our current media, it's like a red flag to me that I know that they're working from a program and they're not probably really thinking, they're not probably asking questions right now, and they're probably not seeing the whole truth, or even trying to get to more truth. The problem with a soundbite and saying it like it's the truth is that then it shuts down the curiosity and creates this dead end kind of in the thought process, and it doesn't get us anywhere. It creates a dead end in the communication process and in the thought process. And I think we can do better. I am endeavoring to do better, and I'm not perfect at it. And I will keep trying, and I'll make mistakes, and then I will do my best to apologize when I make a mistake, to reflect on my mistakes so that I can learn as I go forward. And I'm hoping that I'm not the only one going to do that, so that we can get through some of these conflicts together as a society. I think we can. I'm pretty confident after hanging out with these children and watching how they get through their struggles, and again being reminded how those are the same struggles. We're all having the same struggles from grade school on through death and through all of the different political and religious and financial and all the different arenas. We're still having pretty much the same struggles. We have struggles with feeling unworthy. We have struggles with who to love. We have struggles with getting loved back. We have struggles with how to fit into society, how to identify ourselves. We have struggles with how to how to feel like life is fair. We have struggles with feeling like we're being of service and helping and being valued in our groups. They're all they're the same struggles that I see kindergartners having, and the same struggles that I see my 77-year-old mother having as she's struggling with her health and perhaps getting ready to die, and the same struggles that I'm still having at 54. And I'm willing to bet they're the same struggles you're still having too. And that's kind of a beautiful thing when you think about it. I mean, that's a thing in common that we do all have all the time, our struggles. And maybe that's why we, maybe that's why we spend so much time creating them. I don't know. That's probably a conversation for another day. I'm going to take a quick look at my notes and see if I covered everything I wanted to cover while I take a sip of tea. I want to leave you with the final thought that, again, we need each other to have a bigger, more complete perspective of the truth. Perspective of the truth. It's probably still going to be incomplete because we're still moving into the future. Isn't that a neat thing? And the more we can get along and communicate effectively and share our perspectives, the more of the truth we're going to be able to understand. And there's a difference between dictatorship and diplomatic leadership. And I was reminded of that again as I was working in the elementary school. And there was a couple of other substitutes who or teachers. There's teachers and substitutes and EAs. We all work together there. There were some of my coworkers who um, would slip into that, what I would call a low frequency vibe. And so even though they're the adult in the situation with these children, they are trying to use that dictator kind of power through force, sort of, you must listen to me because I am the teacher. And that doesn't work very well. It works a little some of the time. Um, but it doesn't feel good to anyone. It doesn't feel good to the dictator or the people, the children being dictated to. And it also doesn't really work long term. It doesn't build trust and it doesn't build healthy, good relationships and it doesn't build community. And other coworkers use that diplomatic approach. And that's what our whole country is founded on, right? Diplomacy, democracy, probably some other D words. And that is about being sensitive and effective. It's about those nuances. It's about learning to listen. It's about apologizing when we make mistakes. It's about recognizing that we all make mistakes. And so we need to be humble and we need to give each other grace and give ourselves grace. We're not going to be able to get through these things and improve if we don't. And no, I'm not trying to say then we're going to have war or then things are going to be over. I'm just saying that it's going to take longer. It's sort of like, again, to keep using my elementary school analogy, we might have to sit at our desk and be 3 minutes late to recess. That might not be that fun. So, uh, oh, the heater finally stopped. I noticed the background's doing fun things. Well, I hope the sound has been okay. I'm gonna have to check it. And thank you for your patience if it's right on the edge and I went ahead and posted this. Trying to get an episode out every week. I forgot to mention our fantastic sponsors this week. So let me mention them now. They are the Sleeping Dragons Company, where you can awaken your creative spirit with essential oils and herbs that are hard to find. You can find them there. And right now, you can find most of their products on Etsy at sleepingdragonsco.com. I said it wrong in the last episode. That's that's mistakes happen, right? Apologies for that. I did type it correctly, but it is www.sleepingdragons with an S co.com. And that will take you to the Etsy store with a fabulous, fantastic selection of essential oils, hard to find herbs, and much, much more. Check out Sleeping Dragon's company today for all your creativity and self love needs. And our other sponsor is the Authentic Action Academy, which just birthed our first online community outside of the Facebook arena, which has not been making me that happy lately. So we're over at School, SKOOL. Right now, the community is free as we're just not even sprouting the seed yet. The seed is just being planted there. So if you would like to come over to school and find the Authentic Action Academy, then you can join us there. Pretty soon there will be a small cost just to keep everyone really to keep people invested and help keep the thing running, right? Because I got to eat too eventually. Not right now though. The riddle that we started with, what comes down but never goes up? That's the rain. Conversely, what goes up but never comes down? That's age. Ain't nobody getting any younger around here. You're younger today than you will ever be again. How do you like them apples? How do you like me now? I know, I know. That wasn't very nice, was it? See if I can leave you on a pleasanter note. Nobody's getting out alive, so make sure you're doing what you want to do with your life. Thanks for joining me on the Authentic Action Podcast. I'll be seeing you soon. Ciao for now.